Earth imaging satellites. We've heard about them. We've seen them. You can see the space station at night with a visible eye if you know where to look. So among the space stations are tens of thousands of satellites now that look at the planet. And these things circle the planet, looking every second of every day unless they're out for service or for some type of solar shutdown. Remember, a solar storm needs, satellites need to close up because their instruments are so sensitive they will burn up. They will become useless if they see the sun directly, as example, or if a negative electron storm runs by, right? It can destroy these things. So they'll go into a shielding mode and then come back out once the wave is passed. That's how it works, right? Those satellites, especially the imaging satellites that are using any types of sensing, have to be calibrated. So what we did to calibrate a satellite looking at the planet is we have an array of calibration stations across the planet. It's called the EOS project was one of them. They've kind of come and gone because they're still working on putting them out there. I was interested in it from the instrumentation standpoint on what was in the ground stations that the satellites are using to calibrate their instrumentation. They need a reference, a solid reference for all of that electronics and those numbers to be used against. So across our planet are these certification calibration stations for the satellites passing over daily, weekly, monthly, depending on their orbit. They've got very fixed focal lengths for all of their imaging work, which means that they can look very precisely. Decades ago, we could take a photo of a dollar bill from space and identify what type of bill it was. So that's optical imaging. That's some pretty precise photography from space, if you get my drift. It's how stable satellites are without the turbulence of the atmosphere. To be able to get positions that precise to even find the dollar bill on the face of the planet, right? So those satellite calibration stations have a discrete set of instruments put in them, from methane measurements to CO2 measurements to humidity, temperature, airflows, all of those things satellites can sense. There's a set of sensors on the ground that they are double checked against. They are calibrated against. Data is recalibrated against that. Corrections are made to information to make it coincide with the real world that we're sitting on. So that's how these satellite calibration stations work. The array can be subsonic, sonic, can be earth detecting, things as simple as cameras on the ground that are not detecting trees, they're detecting the colors of the light reflected from the trees and using that to calibrate what a satellite is seeing from the air. This technical knowledge of how it works is how a marijuana field can be seen from a satellite. Discrete, significant, unique signatures of plant life itself. We use satellites to find minerals now. We use satellites to map the minerals of the moon, along with the data that we collected by landing on the moon and taking samples. Those samples calibrated instruments that we could use from orbiting around the moon. Now, orbiting is a circular thing as most understand it, so how do you come into why all of this works? If you use a program like earth.nullschool.net and go and look at the layer of CO2 gases that are measured by satellites, you can follow a thread of CO2 measurement satellites and some new ones launched that have exposed what we already knew. It's just proof, it's evidence. Our oil fields, the pipes themselves in the wells are leaking gas. That is the state of Oklahoma for you. We knew it before. Now we have evidences, multiple satellites doing this type of work in different, very specific measurement methodologies, because it's what we do, and the supercomputers that make sense of it. So earth.nullschool.net is open source. You can go see the source code and the data sets they pulled the information from to build a visualization of our round planet. It is just too much for some, not enough for others.